Should Marvel Studios do Elseworlds? So ever since Iron Man came out back in 2008, every single project from Marvel Studios has taken place within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But there might be some benefit to doing stories outside of the MCU. I think this is one of the areas where Marvel can really learn from DC. DC has put out a couple of movies outside of the main universe with Matt Reeves' Batman and Todd Phillips' Joker. And both of those films have been very successful, with the Batman making above $700 million and Joker even clearing the $1 billion mark. But more than just being successful, those films showed the potential benefits of telling stories outside of the main cinematic universe. So the first thing that it allows for is more creative freedom. When you look at Matt Reeves' Batman, it's a lot darker and more grounded than many of the other projects in the DCEU. Because this movie takes place unattached to the main DC universe, Matt Reeves was able to create this world that's more mature. It might not appeal to the same demographic as a lot of these other DC projects, but he's able to have a style and tone that he wants for the Batman character. There's no space for a Superman or a Wonder Woman to show up in Matt Reeves' world. He's created something that's much more grounded, and it doesn't have to make itself open to the more fantastical sides of the DC universe because it's its own thing. And we even saw this with the Marvel Netflix shows like Daredevil and The Punisher. They were able to do something that was much more mature, and it wouldn't have fit within inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the darkness and maturity of those shows is something that most people loved about them. Whereas now they're trying to bring Daredevil and Kingpin and all of those characters into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I just feel like it's a shame because they're not going to be able to maintain the style and tone that they had when it was a standalone project outside of the MCU. One of the big complaints about the MCU is that a lot of their films and projects feel very similar. And the way I've always thought about it, not that it's a bad thing, is that it feels like you have to color within the lines. Because every story in the MCU has to mesh together, it has to fit, you can't go too far in any type of direction or any genre. But outside of the MCU, you don't have to worry about that. What Elseworlds would also allow for is to not be constrained by the continuity. With the MCU sharing now a 15-year continuity, there's a lot of stories that are no longer able to be told because they would contradict what came before in the cinematic universe. So when you think of a character like Black Panther, because they wrote T'Challa out of the MCU, we can't get any stories with T'Challa for a long time. But instead of stopping that, if someone has an interesting idea for a Black Panther movie with T'Challa, they can continue to tell that story outside of the MCU. So that way it doesn't feel weird, like you're recasting him with the old cast from the first Black Panther, but you're also not limiting yourself just because within the continuity of the MCU, T'Challa's dead. Or even you look at Steve Rogers or Iron Man. Just because they're dead, if the MCU goes on for the next 20 years, we won't be able to get any Iron Man or Steve Rogers Captain America stories. If someone has an interesting take on Captain America from World War I or a new grounded version of Iron Man, why should we hold ourselves back from getting those stories just because it doesn't fit within the continuity of the MCU? Allow those stories to be told as Elseworlds. Another interesting thing that can happen with Elseworlds is the possibility of getting directors that wouldn't otherwise direct a Marvel film. And what I mean by that is, famously a couple years ago, Quentin Tarantino called Marvel filmmakers hired hands. And while I don't think that's entirely true, you can definitely see where he's coming from. A lot of these Marvel projects have certain limits and constraints. You've got to match a certain style and tone that fits within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You might have to include things in your movies that set up future projects in the universe. You might not be able to include some things because they contradict, the past continuity. And so a lot of the time, Marvel directors are not able to fully realize their visions. With Elseworld projects, that wouldn't be an issue. Imagine being able to tell directors that you could come in, tell a standalone story that could have any tone and style you want. It doesn't have to adhere to any continuity from the greater MCU. You don't have to worry about setting up future projects. You can just tell your own story, standalone, fully the way that you wanted to tell it. I think there's a lot of directors that you might not think want to direct a Marvel film that would be a lot more open to it, that are currently against it because they don't want to come and be a part of the Marvel machine. Like Scott Derrickson, who was originally supposed to direct Doctor Strange 2, he left the project due to creative differences. Now, the rumor is that he wanted to make Doctor Strange 2 the first MCU horror film. Now, obviously, that wouldn't have worked within the MCU, and that's why they went in a different direction. But imagine that Scott Derrickson was able to tell that story in Elseworlds. They were able to give him Doctor Strange and tell that story and not have to worry about it fitting inside the MCU. We could have got to see something really creative and unique, but we can't because it doesn't fit within the greater universe. But those are just my thoughts on it. You guys let me know, what type of Elseworld movies would you like to see from Marvel? What type of directors that you would never think would direct a Marvel movie do you think would be cool if they came in and directed one? Leave any other thoughts you have in the comment section below. Subscribe for more videos, and until next time, thanks for watching.